I don't know, not having that foundation. And it took over my life. Fame is a very weird thing. I mean, I enjoyed every single minute of it until I realized that the only thing in my life was fame.
They laughed when no one was watching, and they comforted each other when life felt too heavy. But behind those smiles was silence, a silence packed with heartbreak, pride, and regret. For years, Elton John kept quiet about the deep bond he shared with Princess Diana and the pain that nearly tore them apart. Now he's finally ready to open up about the story that changed both of their lives. The night they met, summer of 1981, was a turning point in British history. Prince Charles was preparing to marry Diana Spencer, the young woman everyone called the People's Princess, and the whole nation was obsessed with the fairy tale. For Elton, already one of the world's biggest music icons, that year meant something deeper, the start of a friendship that would leave a mark on his heart. By then, Elton was no stranger to royalty. The Queen Mother adored his songs, and Princess Margaret, known for her wild charm, often invited him to private gatherings at Kensington Palace. He had played for aristocrats, laughed with dukes, and even joked with Prince Philip, who once teased him for showing off his bright yellow Aston Martin around Windsor. But despite all that glamour, Elton never truly felt he belonged, until one unforgettable night, Prince Andrew's 21st birthday party inside Windsor Castle. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, diamonds, and royal elegance. Elton, dressed surprisingly simple for himself, sat at the piano playing soft tunes while the elite mingled around him. He later admitted he felt nervous and totally out of place among all those polished lords and ladies. Then, across the room, he saw her, Diana Spencer, young, glowing, and not yet a princess. The energy in the room instantly changed. She had this effortless charm, a presence that made everyone feel seen. Elton later wrote in his book, Me, that she had an ability to make anyone feel completely comfortable in her company. When their eyes met, he smiled. She smiled back with pure warmth. Moments later, they were chatting like old friends, laughing about the awkward background music. Suddenly, they began pretending to dance the Charleston right there in the ballroom, so funny and unexpected that even the Queen noticed and smiled. Elton would later say, "That night, I felt like I'd known her forever." For Diana, that moment meant more than anyone realized. She was just weeks away from stepping into a royal life filled with rules, pressure, and constant attention from the press. To Elton, she was refreshingly real, quick, funny, and full of heart. He called her the best dinner guest, incredibly indiscreet and a real gossip, but she cared deeply about people. From that night on, their connection grew strong, two outsiders finding comfort in each other's company. She was a woman about to trade her freedom for the royal spotlight. She and Elton saw each other's pain, no judgment, just quiet understanding. That instant connection, born from laughter on a ballroom floor, would grow into one of the most powerful friendships of the 20th century. Neither of them could have imagined how deeply their story would one day touch the world.
Success was incredible. I couldn't have done any more than I could have done and been more successful. I would have said to the guy, stay away.
Through the 1980s and early 90s, Elton John and Princess Diana became almost inseparable. Their friendship thrived under the flashing cameras, but few people understood what truly bonded them: honesty and vulnerability. Whenever they appeared side by side, at charity events, royal galas, or concerts, the world saw dazzling smiles and laughter. But behind closed doors, their friendship was built on real compassion. Elton often said Diana had a rare gift. She could make even the most powerful people feel completely comfortable. Yet deep down, she rarely felt that peace herself. She was torn between duty and emotion, royalty and her own humanity. As the decade went on, her marriage to Prince Charles began to cool. Whispers of distance and heartache filled the tabloids. Inside Kensington Palace, Diana felt trapped under the weight of royal formality, smiling for the world while quietly struggling to breathe. Elton knew that kind of loneliness too well. Behind the wild costumes and worldwide fame, he was battling his own demons: addiction, insecurity, and the pressure of being watched every second. That shared pain built a deep, unspoken trust between him and Diana, one that only grew stronger through the toughest years. Diana often showed up to Elton's charity events, especially those supporting AIDS awareness, a cause both of them cared about deeply. At a time when society was full of fear and judgment, Diana broke royal tradition by visiting patients, shaking their hands, and even hugging them without gloves. Elton later said that single act changed everything. It shattered stigma and showed the world her fearless heart. She didn't care about gossip or image. She cared about people, and she had this playful side that matched Elton's perfectly. Diana loved teasing him about his over-the-top outfits, and he admired how she could turn royal stiffness into pure charm. At parties, she'd laugh until her eyes teared up at his jokes, or roll her eyes at the snobbery around them. And somehow, wherever the two of them went, the night always turned unforgettable. One night at a private dinner in London, the room was filled with stars and drama. Both Richard Gere and Sylvester Stallone were there, and according to Elton, they instantly fell for Diana. Things got so tense that it almost turned into a showdown for her attention. Elton later joked that the two actors were utterly bewitched by her charm. Diana had that kind of magic. She could captivate anyone. But behind the glamour, her private life was filled with pain. She battled inner struggles and long nights of loneliness, feeling misunderstood and unloved. Elton often visited her just to talk. No cameras, no headlines, just quiet friendship between two people who needed peace. But the higher her fame climbed, the more complicated her world became. Manipulation, media pressure, and palace politics surrounded her every move. Elton worried deeply, knowing how hard it was to trust anyone in that kind of spotlight. By the early 90s, they were like brother and sister, teasing, laughing, and sometimes clashing. But even the strongest bond can crack under pressure. Fame, pride, and exhaustion slowly wore them down, until one painful misunderstanding pushed their friendship to its breaking point. By the mid-1990s, everyone was talking about it. The rift between Elton John and Princess Diana had become royal gossip at its finest.
From America, because I came to America from England with my eyes wide open, because this is the place I always wanted to come to. This is where all the great music came from, the movies, everything about it.
They had survived scandals, laughed off headlines, and supported each other in ways no one else ever knew. But in 1996, something totally unexpected happened. Something that tore their friendship apart and left them both in silence. It all began with a charity project close to Elton's heart. A coffee table book filled with stunning rock photography. The plan was to donate all profits to an AIDS foundation. Diana had agreed to write the foreword, a bold and heartfelt gesture that meant everything to Elton. Her support wasn't just friendly, it was symbolic of the compassion and courage she'd shown in fighting stigma around the disease. But suddenly, everything changed. Out of nowhere, a polite letter arrived from Diana's office. She was pulling out of the project. The reason? Royal disapproval. Palace advisors didn't want her tied to a book that featured artistic photos of male models. They thought it wasn't appropriate for a royal image. For Elton, it felt like a punch to the heart. It wasn't about royalty, it was about friendship. Years later on Larry King Leave, he admitted, "I wasn't too happy and I let her know that." He sent her a message filled with disappointment, hurt that someone he trusted had been forced to step back when he needed her most. Diana, feeling trapped by pressure and expectations, sent what Elton later called a TSE letter. Terse, serious, and ending things coldly. After that, silence took over. For months, they didn't speak. Elton said he was heartbroken, not because she stepped away from the project, but because of how distant she became. At that time, Diana was under immense stress. Her divorce from Prince Charles had just been finalized in August 1996. She'd lost her title, her Royal Highness, and with it, a big part of her identity. The press chased her endlessly, and the palace gave her no comfort. Surrounded by people with mixed intentions, she started doubting who she could actually trust. Elton believed the palace had a hand in her withdrawal, but deep down, he also wondered if she was just exhausted from being tied to everyone else's causes. Whatever the truth was, the damage was done. Two people who once shared everything, laughter, secrets, even tears, had suddenly become strangers. It was awful, Elton later said. We'd always been honest with each other, but pride got in the way. He admitted he could have reached out, but didn't. We were both too proud, he confessed. And just like that, their silence stretched on, growing heavier with every passing month. Elton kept busy with his charity work while Diana tried to rebuild her life as an independent humanitarian. But deep down, both carried the quiet pain of a friendship that still felt unfinished. Neither of them knew that fate was about to bring them back together in the middle of heartbreak. On July 15th, 1997, shocking news hit the world. Designer Gianni Versace, a close friend to both Elton and Diana, had been found gone outside his Miami home. The fashion and entertainment worlds were shaken. Diana had worn one of his gowns for Harper's Bazaar back in 1991 and adored him deeply as a friend and confidant. After hearing the news, she reportedly turned to her bodyguard and asked quietly, "Do you think they'll do that to me?" The words were haunting and would later feel like a chilling hint of what was to come. At Versace's funeral in Milan, Elton sat quietly, heartbroken. Then through the crowd, Diana appeared. They hadn't spoken in months, but she walked right up to him, took his hand, and said softly, "I'm so sorry, it was silly. Our falling out. Let's be friends again." Elton said that moment moved him more than words could express, and just like her, Diana eased the heaviness with humor. She whispered, "Actually, God, I'd love a polo." They both laughed.
There were no mobile phones. There was no paparazzi. There was no internet. You just did what you did, and you loved doing it. So,
and just like that, their friendship came back to life. They promised to see each other again soon, but heartbreakingly, that reunion never happened. In the early hours of August 31st, 1997, the world changed forever. Elton John woke up to the sound of his fax machine buzzing. The message read, "So sorry to hear about this. Awful news." Confused, he turned on the TV, and his heart sank. Princess Diana had been lost in a car crash in Paris. She was only 36. Elton said it felt unreal. Just weeks earlier, they'd been laughing together at Versace's funeral, and now she was gone. The pain was too heavy to put into words. Soon after, the Spencer family reached out to Elton, asking him to perform at her funeral. With his longtime collaborator Bernie Taupin, he rewrote his 1973 song "Candle in the Wind," originally for Marilyn Monroe. The new version began with the words, "Goodbye, England's rose, may you ever grow in our hearts." On September 6th, 1997, Elton stood inside Westminster Abbey, trembling as he played before millions around the world. "For 4 minutes," he later said, "the world was watching me, but it wasn't about me. It was about her." Candle in the Wind. 1997 became the best-selling single in history, over 33 million copies sold. Yet Elton confessed he never felt proud of it because it came from a place of pure sorrow. "Why would anyone want to listen to it?" Elton once admitted about Candle in the Wind, 1997. "It felt too painful, nothing to celebrate. To him it wasn't a hit, it was a scar that never truly healed." Years went by, but Elton never forgot his promise to protect Diana's sons. When Prince Harry faced brutal media pressure decades later, Elton spoke out saying, "I feel a deep sense of duty to protect Harry and his family from the same press intrusion that hurt Diana." He's remained close to both princes, often inviting them into his home away from the spotlight. Still, Elton carried guilt over their brief fallout in the 1990s. "If I could go back," he said, "I would have picked up the phone. I would have said sorry. Life's too short for pride." He later admitted he believed palace influence pushed Diana to withdraw from that charity project, a reminder of how much pressure surrounded her every move. Their bond was something the world had never seen, a princess and a rock star, connected by laughter, pain, and understanding. Through Elton, people saw the real Diana, not the polished royal, but a woman who laughed, cried, and cared deeply. And through her, Elton rediscovered compassion and purpose, dedicating his life to AIDS advocacy and humanitarian work. Even now, when he sits at the piano and the crowd grows silent, there's always a brief pause, as if he still hears her laughter echoing softly. She proved that kindness could shine even in a world built on image, and that's what made her unforgettable. Their friendship was real, flawed, and forever. Decades later, Elton still carries her memory, like a candle that never goes out. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts below.